police officer dies in a car crash south of Bunbury. A new marine park to protect the entire length of the Ningaloo Reef. And a double century to Justin Langer puts Australia in control in Adelaide. Good evening, Allison Hembrough with ABC News. First tonight, a police officer has been killed and a fellow officer seriously injured in a car crash in the state's southwest. The officer was on duty when his car and another vehicle collided on the Bustle Highway near Capel.
The 29-year-old police officer from Eton and his 48-year-old partner, both stationed in Bunbury, were on patrol in an unmarked vehicle when the crash occurred around 10 a.m. It's believed the officer started to do a U-turn when the patrol car collided with a four-wheel drive utility. He was killed while the senior constable in the passenger seat was critically injured. He was airlifted to Royal Perth Hospital for treatment. The driver of the second vehicle escaped serious injury. Police Commissioner Carl O'Callaghan immediately flew to the scene with senior officers and the police chaplain to offer support to the officers' families.
I've been and seen the wife of the deceased officer, and we've had a long talk this afternoon. We will, of course, continue to provide support for her and her extended family for as long as it takes.
This is a tragic reminder to all those families of the risks involved in policing, and I extend my sympathy to their families and all policing families.
Meanwhile, police are investigating a hit-and-run incident overnight on Southern River Road in Gosnells. 19-year-old Adam Morrison was walking to a friend's place from a party when he was hit behind by a car and killed. Police say the fact he was wearing dark clothing and the road isn't lit could have contributed to his death and are calling on the driver of the vehicle to come forward.
They may think it was something else, but they would definitely be aware that something's hit their vehicle. There's a lot of debris and damage from the vehicle left at the scene.
Local resident Helen Harris says the isolated stretch of road is extremely dangerous.
Nowhere for the people to walk, open drain, so you basically got to walk on the road or just on the edge of the road. Yeah. And it's very dark.
Anyone with information is asked to call the Major Crash Unit. Lisa Dalton, ABC News.
A 37-year-old Frenchman has drowned at Scarborough Beach early this afternoon. Surf lifesavers say the man, who's been living and studying in Perth for 2 years, failed to surface after diving under a wave. He was swimming with his girlfriend, who decided to leave the water because it was too rough. Seconds later, his body was found by another swimmer, and although lifeguards attempted resuscitation for 20 minutes, he could not be revived. Lifesavers say the couple were in the water directly in front of no swimming signs.
There's been a problem there for a couple of weeks. It is a fairly strong hole. It's creating a fairly big current. When the swell comes in, there's a lot of turbulence. It's a bit like a washing machine in the water.
There were several rips along the beach between Scarborough and Trigg today. Last weekend, surf lifesavers rescued 200 people in similar conditions. The state government has announced plans to extend Ningaloo Marine Park, giving it more protection than the Great Barrier Reef. The plan, which focuses on limiting fishing areas, has angered recreational fishermen who say tourism will suffer.
Premier Jeff Gallop was doing some pre-election angling for the Green vote today, and his announcement limiting fishing on the Ningaloo Reef went swimmingly with WA's Save Ningaloo campaign.
The announcement we're making today will put the Ningaloo Marine Park amongst the highest echelons of protected coral reef systems in the world.
It's a good outcome. It's based on people power, hundreds of thousands of people who supported the Save Ningaloo campaign. It's based on reasonable recreational fishers who'll still have 2/3 of the marine park where they can fish, and it's based on good science.
Ningaloo Marine Park, which is home to 500 species of fish, will now cover the whole 290-kilometre coral reef system between North West Cape and Red Bluff. 34% of the park, highlighted in yellow, will be no-take areas for fishermen. In many cases, the boundaries are 100 metres offshore, so beach fishing will still be allowed. Snorkelling and scuba diving are permitted anywhere in the park. But there's concern that fishing-related industries will lose $150 million a year.
We cannot accept that after taking 50% bag limit cuts throughout the Gascoyne as part of a programmed fisheries response, we should have 34% of the area locked up for future generations with no consultation.
$8.5 million will be spent on managing the expanded marine park, including the employment of 6 new calm officers. Carolyn Cull, ABC News.
Queensland Police have sent reinforcements to Palm Island, hoping to prevent a repeat of yesterday's violence. Hundreds of island residents rioted, destroying buildings and leaving police in fear of their lives.
This is all that remains of Palm Island's police station and courthouse. They were torched yesterday, along with a watch house, a police residence and a car.
Grave fears were held by those officers and justifiable fears for their safety. It was a very, very serious matter.
Media and island workers fled as police declared an emergency situation and sent 80 officers to restore peace.
They have evacuated a number of public servants and residents of Palm Island over the last 24 hours.
Police now believe the riot may well have been premeditated. But the community's leaders say that's not true.
If it were, it would have happened from Monday, because this started Monday.
We believe that the water was turned off, so there was an inability to fight the fire. And as well, there were roadblocks put across the road to the airport.
The destruction was sparked by the release of an interim autopsy report into the death in custody of island resident Cameron Dumaji. He suffered 4 broken ribs and a ruptured liver. Police say he fell on concrete steps during a scuffle with an officer. This afternoon, the airport was reopened, but the situation remains tense.
We will work with the community to move out of this self-destructive cycle and to ensure that young people on the island in particular have got a future.
9 people have been arrested and transported to Townsville to appear in court on Monday.
But it would be too early to say whether the police were going to use attempted murder. They certainly would be looking at destruction of public property, riotous behaviour as charges.
That a number of people played a key role in this, and we think it's important that those people be charged and appear before a court.
The state government has ruled out cutting funding to the community, but has called on the island's council to show stronger leadership. Nick Harmson, ABC News, Palm Island.
The musician and newly elected Labor MP Peter Garrett has been released from hospital after collapsing at the beach this morning. Mr Garrett was enjoying an early morning swim in his Sydney electorate when he blacked out and had to be helped from the water.
Peter Garrett emerged from hospital this evening looking tired but relaxed.
Look, it's good to be back on my feet again, and great thanks to the beach inspectors, the AMBOs and the terrific staff here at the hospital that have worked so hard today.
Just after body surfing towards shore at Maroubra Beach this morning, he'd started to feel strangely weak and he blacked out at the water's edge. Another swimmer came to his aid, then lifeguards took over.
They helped him up the beach out of the shore break. We administered some oxygen therapy just to make his breathing a little bit easier.
He then went to hospital by ambulance. Although Mr Garrett seemed a lot better even by the time he was taken from the beach, he was still kept in emergency for the day while a series of tests was run to try to determine what had caused his collapse. The 51-year-old is a regular swimmer. He recently ran an active campaign to win Kingsford Smith. He was an energetic frontman for Midnight Oil. And friends say he's always been very fit and healthy. So the collapse came as a shock.
No obvious causes as to why this happened, and we'll get some more tests and checks done next week.
Mr Garrett was meant to be at an engagement in his electorate today. He's now keen to get back to work as soon as possible. Deborah Rice, ABC News, Sydney.
Overseas now, there are new security fears for the ASEAN Leaders Summit in Laos to be attended next week by the Prime Minister John Howard. An American warning that militants could target the conference has been echoed by a member of a rebel group during an interview with the ABC. A warning that this story contains some disturbing images. Southeast Asia correspondent Peter Lloyd reports from the capital, Vientiane.
They're hoisting an Australian flag at the ASEAN Summit for the first time. It's what Paul Keating wanted but could never achieve. Now, John Howard has not only secured a one-off seat at the table, but a done deal on a timetable for a free trade agreement with Southeast Asia's 500 million people.
These things will start next year. The principles to guide the negotiation will be blah, 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 blah. It's all there.
They're getting ready to play host in one of the world's last remaining communist regimes. Security is tight to guard against a repeat of deadly bomb attacks in recent years. The government blames Hmong guerrillas, a ragtag ethnic group which has been fighting from the jungle ever since the communists came to power in 1975. A recent target, the Australian-funded Friendship Bridge that connects Laos to Thailand.
ASEAN security worries grew a few weeks back when 2 pipe bombs exploded near the bridge. No one was hurt, nothing was damaged, but the government here was deeply embarrassed. They want to bomb the summit.
This Hmong leader confirmed US warnings of a plot to disrupt the summit. He doesn't want his face to be seen by Lao authorities.
The supermarket, some place, the airports, the bus station, they don't like the government. They want the Lao government to change.
This gruesome videotape purports to show the aftermath of an atrocity against Hmong teenagers by government troops. The victims had been foraging for food when they were shot, then raped. Human rights groups say it is evidence of a war crime and want John Howard to speak up about it.
Like other countries, I think the Australians can make a difference. I think they can ask for Laos to come clean about what's going on, to offer assistance where assistance is needed, and encourage the country to open up.
The Lao authorities refused to acknowledge the video.
We have never seen that in our file.
So you don't believe the tape exists?
Oh, no, just something fabricated, no.
Workers are putting the finishing touches to Vientiane, but it will take more than fresh paint to disguise the impression that John Howard's host is a regime with blood on its hands. Peter Lloyd, ABC News, Vientiane.
Ukraine's parliament will hold an emergency session tomorrow to discuss the political chaos caused by Sunday's disputed presidential election. The opposition leader, Viktor Yushchenko, is demanding a rerun, claiming the election was rigged. As Europe correspondent Philip Williams reports from the capital, Kiev, his supporters are still massing on the streets despite the sub-zero temperatures.
At times, Ukraine's political crisis looked more like a rock concert. Countless thousands joining the opposition rally at Independence Square. But there was serious business in the Ukrainian capital. European leaders, heads of state and EU representatives joined a round table with the protagonists to try and break the impasse. They didn't get far.
The atmosphere, when I talk to them separately, I will describe it as warm with me, but cold with the other.
There was little progress, agreement to continue talking, a lifting of the blockades on government buildings, and a commitment from both sides not to use the army or to resort to violence. Despite the appearance of compromise, Viktor Yushchenko says he'll keep his supporters in the streets until his demands are met. People are going to stay here until victory, and the victory will be the calling of fresh elections, which I will win, he said. Earlier in the day, his campaign was boosted with the arrival of police cadets who declared their loyalty. But the other side had its supporters too. There may have been less of them, but no less enthusiastic. Around 20,000 supporters of Prime Minister Yanukovych filled the area outside Kiev's main railway station. Today I call for negotiations with this impudent Yushchenko, he said. That tone reflected in the crowds, which include miners given paid time off and bussed from the east to the capital. This miner said he was prepared to stay for a long time. We face death every day in the mines, he said. This hardship is nothing. But if there were any hopeful signs, it was here on the street, blue and orange together, arguing, but without abuse or violence.
We are all Ukrainian people, and we are all together. Some political...
West and East together.
West and East together.
A message two competing political egos clearly haven't reconciled.
The problem is a perceived win on one side is regarded as a loss on the other. If anything, attitudes are hardening with no clear way out. Philip Williams, ABC News, Kiev.
A broad-based group of Iraqi politicians has called for elections scheduled for next January to be delayed because of the violence. Representatives of 15 political parties, including members of the interim government, said the vote should be delayed until at least June. They say the extra time is needed to organise the poll and improve security. However, leaders of the Shiite majority did not sign and want the election held as soon as possible. The jailed Palestinian politician Marwan Barghouti says he will not be a candidate to replace Yasser Arafat as Palestinian president. The announcement was made by leaders of the Fatah faction of the PLO. It avoids a potential split in Palestinian ranks and leaves former Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas the front runner.
It seems that Marwan opted for national unity
for unity within Fatah at the expense of his own personal ambition.
Mr Barghouti's decision removes the potential embarrassment of having an elected Palestinian leader languishing in an Israeli jail. Perth yachtsman Chris Packer has resigned himself to a long stay in a Bali prison while Indonesian authorities decide whether to charge him over suspected gun-running offences. The former Sydney to Hobart and Admiral's Cup sailor has been detained for more than a week after police found undeclared firearms and ammunition aboard his vessel. Family friend Paul Downey says the 52-year-old is in regular contact and receiving good legal advice.
He's more concerned really about the ship. He's obviously concerned about when he will be able to get out. But having said that, the legal advice to him is, look, you just have to wait for the Indonesian legal system to come to your case.
Mr Packer maintains he needs the guns for clay pigeon shooting and self-defence against pirates in Southeast Asia. The state government is set to increase fines and penalties for motorists who continue to use their handheld mobile phones while driving. Nearly 18,000 infringement notices have been issued since using a handheld phone while driving became an offence back in 2001. Police Minister Michelle Roberts admits the current penalties don't seem to be a deterrent and is waiting on advice from the police and Road Safety Council to increase them.
I'm fully expecting the recommendation on mobile phones to be increasing the number of demerit points from about 1 to 3.
Just this month, the deaths of 2 people have been linked to using mobile phones while driving. Former Ansett workers facing another Christmas without their full entitlements are demanding the government release funds immediately. When Ansett collapsed 3 years ago, 16,500 employees were left without jobs. They're still owed more than $200 million in entitlements, which administrators won't start to pay until next year. Today, former employees called for the federal government to release more of the $280 million it collected for Ansett workers through an airline passenger ticket levy.
It's immoral. They are making a profit out of people's misery, and it's un-Australian.
Unions claim the government has been shortchanging the former employees, many of whom are struggling. The English cricket team has arrived in Zimbabwe after officials dropped their threat to cancel the tour. But as Africa correspondent Sally Sara reports from Harare, the controversy threatens to sour the tour.
The English players arrived 2 days late. The team threatened to pull out earlier in the week. But the series is back on after the Zimbabwean government agreed to lift its ban on a group of British journalists. England now wants to get the tour over and done with.
The only effective way that closure can be brought to the affair is by playing the cricket, and that's what we're going to do.
There was a blunt message waiting for the English cricketers. Graffiti close to the team hotel spelt out the ill feeling. Critics of the England and Wales Cricket Board believe the tour should have been cancelled on moral and political grounds. But the players and officials are defending their reluctant decision to go ahead.
The players are not condoning, the issues of Zimbabwe. They're just professional cricketers doing their job.
The English players threw their energy into practice at the Harare Sports Club. The series has been cut back from 5 matches to 4 because of the delayed arrival of the English team.
The English team is facing strong criticism at home for coming to Zimbabwe in the first place. And team officials haven't made many friends in Harare either. The Zimbabwe Cricket Union is demanding compensation for the cancellation of the first match.
Pick me.
The young Zimbabwean players are waiting for the politics to stop and the cricket to begin. The first match will be played tomorrow. The series moves to Bulawayo later in the week. Sally Sara, ABC News, Harare.
And now with today's sports news, here's Trevor Jenkins.
Thank you, Allison, and good evening. Justin Langer has become just the 5th Australian to score 3 double centuries as Australia took a stranglehold on the second test in Adelaide. Langer led the way with a memorable 215 as Australia rammed home its advantage by grabbing 2 New Zealand wickets before stumps.
Dressed to impress despite temperatures in the mid-30s, the Adelaide faithful were in good cheer and hoping local boy Darren Lehman would give them more reason to celebrate. It was Justin Langer, though, who provided the best entertainment.
This could be out, or is it all the way?
Lehmann was solid in passing 50 as he and Langer built a record fourth-wicket partnership against the Black Caps. 15 minutes before lunch, Langer reached the third double century of his career.
And that's a magnificent double 100 for Justin Langer.
The Australians adding 106 without loss in that first session. The West Australian left-hander departed after the break for 215.
There's a man out there in deep square. He's got to get it. And does.
It wasn't exactly a procession, but the New Zealanders were enjoying their most productive period. Michael Clarke trapped in front, and then Lehmann on his way for 81 as Australia lost 3 for 20.
Bowled him, that's beautifully bowled. Clean bowled.
The assault on the bowling didn't stop as Australia reached 6 for 533 at tea and pushed on to lose 2 more wickets before calling a halt to the innings when Daniel Vettori claimed his 5th wicket.
That's in the air and that's out.
After spending the better part of 2 days baking in the sun, Captain Stephen Fleming was maybe dreaming of a better place. Matthew Sinclair lived the nightmare out for a duck.
Gone! Got him!
As Fleming strode to the crease, Paul Wiseman was already auditioning for the role of night watchman. He could have been needed when Mark Richardson edged one into his pad and Lehmann took a blinder, but the umpires gave the benefit to the batsman. There was no doubt about Richardson's fate in the next over, though.
He's clean bowled him. He was late on that one. That's a beautiful delivery.
Big day. Queenslander Rod Pampling will take a one-stroke lead into the final round of the Australian Open in Sydney. Pampling started the day at 8 under par, but dropped 3 shots to finish at 5 under. Victorian Richard Green shot one of the best rounds of the day to move into second place.
Andre Stoltz may have had a disappointing third round, but he was riding high on the par 3 second hole.
Andre Stoltz. And an ace on the second.
The hole-in-one earned him a $32,000 motorbike, but he finished the round 10 over par. Two-time winner Aaron Baddeley had a horror start. A trip to the sand trap at the second hole saw him drop 3 shots.
Oh, this is disaster.
While Victorian Richard Green showed greater accuracy, 2 birdies on the opening 3 holes saw him move to 2 under par.
Oh!
Very tasty little chip from Richard Green.
Overnight leader Rod Pampling had a nervous start, his first tee shot keeping the crowd on their toes.
And this one headed left as well.
2 bogeys on the first 2 holes saw his lead cut to just 2 shots.
He's going to drop another one.
Putting pressure on the leaders was Paul Gow, who bogeyed the first hole before stringing together consecutive birdies.
And it could be a 2-shot swing there.
Another bogey on the 5th by Pampling allowed his playing partner Kurt Barnes to tie the lead.
He now has a share of the lead.
On the back 9, Richard Green again showed how to do away with the putter when he chipped in for an eagle to move into a 3-way share of the lead.
And that has catapulted him to the top of the leaderboard.
Stuart Appleby had a mixed day, but a final hole birdie left him in contention at 2 under. Green dropped a shot on the 16th to finish at 4 under. He moved to second place when Barnes recorded 2 bogeys in the final 5 holes. It took Pampling until the 17th hole to snare his first birdie of the day, and he'll head into the final round with his sights still set on a first Open title.
Australian pride will be on the line tomorrow morning with test matches against the old enemy in both of the rugby codes. The Wallabies will start as underdogs against England, while Great Britain fancies its chances in the Rugby League Tri-Nations final.
The Wallabies have been unconvincing on their end-of-season tour, and their rugby league counterparts were beaten by Great Britain 2 weeks ago. The British believe tomorrow will be their day in both codes.
I think there's a lot of respect between rugby league and rugby union nowadays, and I think we're all batting for each other, to be honest.
The Wallabies were trounced by France, hit hard by injuries against Scotland, and haven't won at Twickenham since 1998, but are still talking up their prospects.
With the work that we've done and the way that we've physically prepared, there's no way that we can be beaten, I think, if we're on their game.
Against South Africa last week, England appeared close to its World Cup winning best.
Last week was a great result for us, but at the same time, we know we've got to play a lot better this week against Australia.
In rugby league, Great Britain believes this is its best chance to end 26 years of Australian dominance.
Everyone wants to make history, really, so it's exciting as well as a bit daunting.
There's been plenty of series as we got down to the last game, so
This one's no different, it's the way it should be.
League legend Graham Langlands will present the Australian players with their jerseys before the final.
Eras change, and there could be a change coming up, but let's hope it's not.
Captain Darren Lockyer is likely to be the key to the Kangaroos keeping their proud record intact.
To football, and the Eagles welcome 2 new recruits into the nest today. The club's first draft pick, Matt Rosa, and new development coach, Neil Ross. Rosa was taken at 29th overall in last weekend's national draft. A slightly built midfielder, he represented Victoria country in the under-18s AFL Championships.
We haven't really sat down and had a proper chat about what my role will be next year, or how quick they're expecting me to break into the side, but yeah, I suppose I'll just have to wait and see and take it as it comes.
He's certainly a very talented boy, and he needs to put a bit of weight on, but he's going to be a very talented player for the Eagles.
Ross comes to the Eagles from the Oakley Chargers. He was the rookie coach at Collingwood for 2 seasons and has also coached in the VFL. Olympic medalist Brooke Hansen has pulled out of the World Short Course event in Melbourne so she can focus on getting her body right for next year. Hansen has a strained back and hip, which refers pain down her leg.
It's been quite difficult to make this decision. Obviously, I love racing and competing in front of a home crowd in Melbourne on the face of the meet, so it's pretty unfortunate not to race. But like I said, just really looking forward to competing next year, and I've got bigger and better things to come.
In today's heats, 19-year-old Talia Zimmer broke the Australian record in the 100 metres backstroke. She's the fastest qualifier for tonight's final, just ahead of Gian Rooney. The Perth Wildcats are chasing a winning finish to their Queensland road trip as they take on the Taipans in Cairns tonight. At half-time against the Taipans, Perth leads by a point, 41-40. Last night against Townsville, Rozelle Ellis hit a game-high 38 points as the Cats ended a 3-game losing streak with a 9-point win. The first half saw a feisty and fired-up Scott Fisher tech-fouled. The Cats coach had plenty to say to the officials, but Perth took a 6-point lead into half-time. Townsville had lost its past 4 matches against the Wildcats and trailed by 13 points at three-quarter time, with Ellis in sensational form. The win, a much-needed one for the well-travelled Cats, Perth has played in 5 different cities in just 10 days. And finally, in WNBL, the Perth Lynx lost last night to Canberra 74-56. That's our sport. Now here's Allison again with the weather. Good night.
Thanks, Trevor. A fine spring day today in Perth with slightly cooler conditions expected tomorrow. Perth had a top of 26 degrees at just before 3 this afternoon. The overnight low was 17 degrees at 5 o'clock this morning. Witchcliffe reported the coldest night with 9 degrees. The lowest maximum was 22 at Cape Lewin. The highest temperature of 43 degrees was shared by Warburton, Carnegie, Marble Bar and Christmas Island. Isolated showers are forecast tending scattered about the southwest Capes. Some thundery showers may develop in far eastern parts of the southwest land division, the Goldfields, East Gascoyne and Eucla. On Sunday, a weak cold front is expected to affect the lower southwest, bringing isolated showers. The remainder of the southern half will remain fine. In the Kimberley, Interior and East Pilbara, isolated seasonal thunderstorms are forecast. Looking around the country, most centres will be fine with a chance of a late shower in Canberra. Temperatures rising 1 or 2 degrees for most northern centres tomorrow. Afternoon showers and thunderstorms developing in the East Gascoyne and Goldfields. Near the southwest Capes, scattered showers tomorrow. For the remainder of the lower southwest, isolated showers. For Perth, fine tonight, a shower or 2 tomorrow, light winds tending moderate westerly, and a top of 24 degrees is expected after an overnight low of 14 degrees. The outlook then is for a possible shower or 2 on Monday, but returning to fine weather conditions on Tuesday and then warmer on Wednesday. And that's the news to now. I'll be back in an hour with an update, but until then, good night.